Good morning. Dave is busy watching his computer. I'm Todd Bookspan. And on behalf of Mortgage Coach and Win by Noon, welcome to our Friday Mastermind call. How are you this morning, Dave?
I'm good, Todd. Thank you for kicking things off when we went live. I wasn't just looking at my computer. I was setting things up, preparing to moderate today's session.
Well, I know you always have a plan, and it's what people don't realize is there's that mystery time, right, where we know it's pushed live to Facebook, but we don't exactly know, what instant it's going to go live. And so I just saw your head down, and I thought I would take advantage of poking fun at you today.
Well, first of all, thank you. We didn't want to have that awkward time where people are just watching me work on my computer. So Mortgage Coach community, every Friday, 9 o'clock Pacific, we're here to mastermind as a community. Thing that's super cool about this is we have a lot of people that are live. Some of you are live in our Zoom platform. Some of you are live in our Facebook group. But here's the deal, guys. Where all the value comes from is the questions you ask us. Jeremy participated quite a bit in this Tuesday's interview with Ryan Grant and helped me pull out some really good questions from that. I interviewed Ryan Grant this Tuesday on leadership and team building. If anybody has a question on that, ask in today's mastermind. Todd and I will surely have some answers for you. And if there's some information you want from Ryan as a follow-up to that, let us know. This coming Tuesday, 9 o'clock Pacific, I'm going to be interviewing Craig Strett. He's a $50 million a year producer, and he also is the CEO of a company that's on track to do $1 billion this year. So very successful, very busy guy that's wearing both a leadership hat and a team hat and a mortgage advisor hat. And so this Tuesday, it's going to be all about how does Craig get business from CPAs and financial planners. I used to get business from CPAs and financial planners. Craig is all about financial planners and past clients. So come check that out. So Todd, you led last week's call, and we had Steve Sims on the call. I was coming to you live from Northern California with Jeremy Forcier. Anything you want to make sure we follow up from on last week's call, or anything you want to talk about before we get into it?
I'd throw out there, certainly what Steve talked about were some of the things that we've talked about in here before, probably the number one thing being video text. And, should you be using it more? I've started to see some more folks post their videos that they're putting out there as a communication tool to get in front of leads, to get in front of your realtors, to keep your clients updated. And, I always like Steve because he's not from the mortgage industry. So he always puts on a different, spin to it. And so I would just say, gosh, if you're struggling with what to say and what to do, go back and watch that video. But I do think he's done a really good job of really making sure that he's kind of set up that next call. How do you get that person answer?
Hey, Todd, is that you with the background? Are you hearing that background noise?
I'm hearing the background noise. It's not me.
I'll make that work too, even though I'll be at the show. But I made some comments.
If someone could control their mute. Marcy, are you hearing that?
There we go. All right.
Thank you.
We're back.
Thank you, Marcy.
Every once in a while, the Wizard of Oz, steps in.
Yeah, no doubt. So one thing, first of all, Todd, I cut you off. You keep going there.
I was just saying, I think the big thing is that if you're having troubles getting a hold of your leads, right, you always talk about multi-channel communication, Dave, right? And I think that's where people are forgetting, there's so many people right now that won't answer your call unless you're in their contacts, right? You're just set up to go straight into spam and voicemail. But we know if you send that video text, they're going to at least look at it. And I think that's an opportunity because I'm talking to loan officers. I probably had about, 12 or 14 calls, this week with loan officers. And that's really one of the biggest struggles they're reporting is getting their leads to actually respond. And it's been an old challenge, right? We know the numbers, the statistics are you have to call at least 6 times. But, I do think if you use what Steve talked about as the setup, that you're going to be probably infinitely more likely to get a hold of someone, at least get a response. And in the end, that's all you want, right? It's the whole idea of let's get the no's till we get to the yes. And at least if someone responds back via text, I'm not interested, then you can move on and save yourself some time versus trying to make those next calls. Because ultimately, lead conversion is one of the areas where I'm noticing a gap during refinance time. I'm noticing a gap from following up on your purchase leads because people aren't, they're distracted by their refinances. And I'm also actually hearing of people who aren't doing a good job of following up on their refinance leads where, you know, the client calls in, they build a TCA, they send it to them and oops, never follow up. And so, you know, just use those strategies. I think that that's sort of my takeaways from that conversation with Steve.
Okay. I've got one thing I want to follow up on that, but I do want to just push you guys and remind you, ask us questions. You know, we'll be moderating the chat in Zoom. We'll be moderating the comments in our Facebook group. So ask away. So something I wanted to remind people about from last week's call, I had just gotten done spending, I don't know, half a day shadowing Jeremy Forcier. And one of my takeaways was just how efficient, how effective, and how often he was using Siri as an assistant. And so, you know, I'm preparing for a keynote that I'm doing later this afternoon in LA. And I'm just kind of fine tuning that story, you know, like how am I telling the story in a keynote? And, you know, this is a presentation I just put together where I ask people, what's the number one thing that mortgage pros don't do that they should do? You know, pause. And I really think it's right now, like between now and the end of the year, it's use audio. Hey, Siri, if you have an Android, whatever it is, use it. This is a stat because I've been researching this, you know, just like how many people are actually using their voice search and the voice commands to control their device. And, you know, I don't know how reliable these stats are. I'm like looking for stats online. But here's a stat that 1.8 billion people are using this. And then this is what I thought was interesting was when you look at the demographics and the age of people who are using voice, 16 to 24, 52% of people with mobile devices are using voice. And when you look at 55 to 64, 24%. So here's the thing that caught my mind is like, of these demographics, who should be using voice the most? You know, it's probably like the older you are, the less fast and adapted you are with your fingers. You know, like I know my kids, like, I mean, I can type fast. I'm good with keyboards. My hands just don't work like these digital natives. And so I just find that like an interesting stat. Todd, what are your thoughts? Any comments on just using Siri, using voice to be more efficient, more effective, and more productive?
You know, I've gotten a lot better since I heard you say that last week, because I've been really intentional about putting people's names in my cell phone so that number one is I'll recognize them and they'll come through. Just like I said, oftentimes if they're not in your contacts, they're getting spammed out. And number two is then I can use Siri to follow back up. And so I've made an effort since you called that out last week to do it. It also makes me laugh because Ken Perry, right, Knowledge Coop, which, you know, we both love Ken. He talked about how it as a CE, right, they have to tell people to stay off their phones. And he said, it's not what you think. He said, it's actually not the millennials who are on their phones during CE that he has to, babysit. He said, it's actually the baby boomers. So I thought it's kind of funny that it's the opposite of that slide that you put up there, is that, you know, probably the millennials are more efficient. So therefore, when they get in class, they can actually pay attention versus having to be on their phone to try to send it the old school way.
Well, we could, who knows what it is, but my takeaway from that was just the younger and the closer you are to being a digital native, just the more effective you are. You've grown up learning to balance, you know, your life, your connection with your mobile phone, and you know, boomers, and I'm right on the cusp of X and boomer, and you know, this mobile thing is a new thing. I mean, I could still remember when rate sheets were delivered on faxes, and that was a new thing. You know, so I started the mortgage business when, you know, 1003s were typed out, and I went through the LOS revolution and the mobile revolution, and I just think the closer they are to digital native, the more naturally strategic they are. But anyways, we can spend a lot of time on this. Just a push and a reminder to everyone: use your mobile device strategically, and that also means you can edit and create your total cost analysis on a mobile phone. You should be recording the video or the audio portion of the total cost analysis on your mobile phone. Your speaker is higher quality, your camera is higher quality. So just a reminder and a push to everyone in our community. If you want to optimize your efficiency, your productivity, and the customer experience, you need to use your phone strategically at a really high level. Todd, I do have one topic that I want to make sure we cover. I am getting very intentional, and I'm working to create some courseware on how to go from being a white belt to being a black belt with mortgage advice. So I definitely want to, at some point in this call, talk about that. But anything else you want to talk about before we get into the what does it mean to be a black belt?
Well, I just have one more question for the community on voice. I'd love you guys to comment below if you're actually using Alexa. I tried to pull mine up. I've got one on my desk here, but since I've got my desk raised, I don't have cord, but I put one of those echoes on my desk, and it's super annoying because it flashes stuff at me all day. I normally turn it down so it doesn't distract me, since I'm easily distracted by shiny objects. But I would definitely be interested to hear how, if anyone's using it in their mortgage practice, an Alexa, because I do think that voice is, there's no doubt it's a growing piece. You've heard Gary Vee talk about it. They've done events specifically around it. I'm just not seeing momentum yet on there, but I would love to hear if anyone else is using it. Do you guys have Alexa at home, Dave?
I do. In fact, we have an Alexa. We have it out in our guest house, and my son and I play ping pong a lot. And, my number one command is we walk out, we get ready for ping pong, and Alexa, resume. And she starts playing, U2 radio station. So for the most part, it's a music player. We also have the Apple, I don't know, whatever the Apple.
The pod?
Thing. Yeah, the Apple pod. We have that in the kitchen. And it's also pretty much a music player. Although, we play around with other commands. We played around with flash briefing. We played around with the weather. I've used it a few times to make a phone call. But I have not, my only habit is listening to music for the most part.
I'm laughing because when I started talking about it started playing ocean sounds. Like yesterday, one of my team members was in here and she's like, "Oh, it says to ask Alexa to play ocean sounds." So it started playing ocean sounds for us, and it all of a sudden sparked to life because we're talking about her. So, that's exciting. But you mentioned, I know flash briefings are a soon-to-be big thing in the mortgage space. I know some of our community members are doing them. I just haven't seen results from it yet. But my guess is at some point, if 50-some-odd% of millennials are using voice, that maybe that'll be something in the future. So I'd love just to kind of keep that conversation around, and so that at some point, if you guys start seeing some activity in there or some benefit that you're getting from it, let the community know. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and just to be clear, what I'm advocating for is using Siri to, "Hey Siri, call Jeremy Forcier." Right. And hey, at the end of the day,
call, right?
Yeah, it's all about how many conversations you have, and it's never been easier. Everybody's got an assistant that can make phone calls for you. So it's like, think about it. Like, you're at your desk and you've got an assistant over here that you just tell them, "Hey, call this person. Hey, call that person. Call this person." You don't have to do it, and you're talking to them. Okay. So let's get into the black belt, if you don't mind. And then let's also make sure we talk a little bit about the news with interest rates. And I saw, well, you mentioned it, the post that we saw about news hacking and what should the community be doing right now. But you cool getting into the black belt?
Well, I just love the concept of it, right? Everyone wants to be a black belt, and you're right. A lot of people are white or whatever belts come in between, orange, blue, green. I've never been a karate guy, or you probably know what those belts all are, right? You look like a karate guy, Dave.
Yeah, I played with it. I was a wrestler. I don't think I ever got, I feel like I got past an orange belt one time at something, but I was into wrestling, and then I played around with martial arts, but I never went the distance. But we do have some pretty legit black belts in the mortgage coach community. Tony Blodgett, everybody, is not only a black belt, he got tested in Japan, and he is very into it. So let's go through some thinking on this, and I have two goals really. It's one, to define white belt, and two, to define black belt. So Todd, I'm going to walk through some thoughts I have, and then I would love for you to kind of give some commentary around it. So there's no doubt there's this white belt that everybody needs to be at, and I think this is kind of white belt, and I call it the mortgage triangle, where you're providing rate, you're providing monthly payment, and you're providing cash to close. And I think, like, you can't be a loan officer, you can't do a loan without delivering these 3 data points, and everybody delivers those data points on a fee worksheet. That is white belt. And I don't even think you can call yourself a mortgage advisor. Now, what I am playing with, and I call it the mortgage coach star of advice, is that, yeah, you still need to do those 3 data points, but you also need to show, whoa, my slides got ahead of me there. So I've got to work on this. You've also got to show total cost over time. So to me, you are not a mortgage advisor if you're not showing total cost over time. And you need to, in the right way, in a tailored way, show a financial strategy, like prepaying your mortgage or invest the difference. Those are, call it the requirements that you know how to do, that you're competent at doing, that you're able to do it in just any sales situation you get into. Todd, any commentary around this this concept and some of the data points?
I love it. It's funny because I was originally thinking, right, okay, our community in theory are people who are, orange belts and above and, right, a lot of black belts. But I realize now that there's probably some people who are embarrassingly, closer to a white belt. And I've talked in this community recently about the fact I've been training now for almost 5 months. My brother-in-law who comes out of the restaurant industry. So he's barely a white belt. And it's interesting because, where he struggled was making sure he hit those 3 things you mentioned. He was pretty good at talking about interest rate. And then he realized early on, gosh, you know what? They bought more house. They can't afford the monthly payment. And so then he learned he had to say that. And then, of course, he had clients who would get to the end and, the cash to close would be an issue. So he's gotten finally good at that. He's probably built, I'll have to figure out if I can look in and see, but I bet he's built over 50 TCAs. And so we've been transitioning to him really talking about the longer term strategy. He's starting to work with some more sophisticated clients and he's absolutely working on those other 2 pieces. So I sort of love that sort of what I've been teaching him and sort of what I've built into what I call the win by noon operating system is what you're building in here to the black belt, mortgage coach black belt. I love it.
Cool. And so what is the goal of a black belt? I mean, obviously it's to win the loan, it's to serve the family, but the black belt has a higher goal. It's to teach the family something that they hadn't considered. And so if all you're doing is the triangle, you're probably, the triangle, the transaction, you're not going to teach them something they didn't know, other than they didn't know their monthly payment, they didn't know their cash to close, and you, like everyone else, gave them clarity around that. And then to me, the highest level of service is when you not only teach them something they hadn't considered, but you teach them something they will always remember. And that's where we get the star. We call that a star moment. Star for something, T for they'll, A for always, R for remember. So something they'll always remember is the definition of a star. So the other criteria that I'm playing with, Todd, love to get your feedback on it, is, okay, we've got this star, you could do all of these things, and then what are some of the other skills that you need to have in order to get to black belt status? You need to be able to add a video. I mean, video is a modern way to connect and amplify your voice. You need to know how to use the audio feature. And again, remember guys, audio really is becoming not only a voice command to do things like call people, but it's adding audio to a mortgage coach report so you're personally connecting. You need to know how to use the live feature in Mortgage Coach so that literally you send them the link, the family clicks on it, you're walking them through everything. This concept of omni-channel, it came from the retail industry when the internet really became a thing. And it was all about, hey, as a retailer, how can we serve families in any channel they want to do business? If they want to come into my brick and mortar, I can help them. If they want to go online, I can help them. And then you look at where Nordstrom has taken it. It's like, whether you're online, you can buy something and go get it at the store. You could go into the store and, oh, we don't have that anymore, but we just shipped it to your house. So it's like doing business anywhere and everywhere that the customer wants, and communicating them with anywhere and everywhere that the customer wants. So a black belt in advice needs to, use the Mortgage Coach link to deliver this hybrid experience, and then they absolutely deliver options. And so this is kind of completing the star. Any thoughts on this, Todd? Anything that you think I've left out, or anything that you think is more important than others?
No, I think it's all equally important, because I think in the end, when you go to the quote omni-channel, you need to do all of these things. And I love the Nordstrom example, because ultimately in the end, I think that what we're forgetting, we all know if we can get face-to-face with our clients, that's the best. And, you start off with video and audio. At least if you're not going to get face-to-face with them, at least let them see your face, put a face to the name, and then really think through from a video perspective. I mean, how could you be more omni-channel with your clients is, that's masterful. I'm all in. I like it.
All right. So, hey guys, community, weigh in. Do you think I've kind of nailed this between the triangle, the star, and these are the criteria? Is there something missing? Like I did an interview this morning, kind of a prep call interview with Craig Strant, and it came up that it's questions. There are black belt questions to be asked. So I don't know that I'm going to put that into the star, but we need to have a list of black belt questions. And then another thing that's super clear, to be a mortgage coach black belt, you need to be able to do all these things, and you need to be able to do all of these things based on a lot of sales situations. So like, let's say you could do it all, and you could do it for pre-approvals. Like you know how to do purchase options, but you don't know how to do it with cash out refi, or you don't know how to do it with the cost of waiting, or you've never even done a rent versus own. So to be a mortgage coach black belt is to, the mortgage coach star of advice, make all these moves and then do them in all these different sales situations. So Todd, any thoughts on that?
Well, so let's help some people prioritize, because I'm looking at a comment from Fiona Bryan. She did her first TCA yesterday. High five, nice job. How would you prioritize, all these different, I mean, there's a lot there now. So how should we help the community prioritize where to start? What do you think, as someone who's obviously led this charge for so long?
Yeah, well, I think, the star, the outline of the star, to be able to kind of go through the transactional details with the family, and then to learn how to have the cost over time conversation, the prepaid conversation, the options. I mean, just the concept of going from, hey, here's a fee worksheet with transactional details, to here's mortgage options. That is a pivot. I mean, that is like, how do you do that? So I think, getting good at that, while I do think to get a black belt, think of that as something that takes years. I am currently leaning towards, you are not even eligible for a black belt until you've created 300 total cost analysis. So most people aren't going to do 300 TCAs in a year. I think you're doing a good job if you're doing more than 100. So we're talking to become a mortgage coach black belt you could do it in 2 years, but it's probably a 3-4 year process. So I think it's just start with the key concepts. I'd start on no more than 2 different sales situations. So like, in a refi market, rate and term refis are a big deal, and that's great. In our core market, everybody should know how to do mortgage options. I think everybody should know how to do MI options. Like those are the, if I had to say, like, what are the 3 that you need to attack first? Purchase options, MI options, and refi options. And then I would say, until you've done any one of these 10-ish times, you're not even competent at it. You're figuring it out. So it's I always tell people, when you just get started with a mortgage coach, the first TCA is the hardest. It gets easier after everyone. And don't even think it's going to be easy until you've done it 10 times, like 10, 20, and now you've done something 10 or 20 times. It's saving you time. It's becoming an advantage. It's a move that you can make. I don't know, Todd, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I love it. And, when you talk about things like, hey, learn MI options, right? There's a great thread in there if you guys haven't checked it out. And if you're an MI whiz, like, give it your 2 cents. Because ultimately, I think that's, I think it's just that you need to sit down and go through it and know yourself. Hey, what Dave just said, which resonates with me, and how do I want to do this? Should I do MI options first, or rent versus own for, your realtors, for your client database? But I mean, I would write a written plan. I would go back, take a look at that star, write down everything Dave said, and then prioritize it for you. Hey, which is the order I should do it in? And then start searching the community for posts on it, start searching on the YouTube channel for interviews that that either me or Dave has done on that, and then, you know, check each one off and then start cranking out TCAs. 300. I'm looking forward to getting my, my mortgage coach black belt.
Right on. So a couple resources for you guys to make it easier for you to learn. We have, if you go to our actual webpage and you go to lender services and you go to mortgage coach strategies, this is a webpage where we've taken what we think are some of the best interviews in different sales situations. So, you know, Denise Donahue, we thought she crushed it with the rent versus own. So if you click on this Denise Donahue rent versus own, it's not only going to have, you know, the most recent interview with her on the topic, it's going to have links to the actual TCAs. So you can, you know, hear strategically how she's selling it, how she's positioning it, and then you can see tactically what her output looks like. So you'll notice, I think with the MI analysis, Josh Metal, I did an interview with him where he was literally competing with a first-time home buyer that was shopping him with 7 different lenders. And he showed, you know, how he used that particular strategy to still win the business right here. Oh, actually, this is a refi, but there's another one. Yeah, I don't want to. Here's, anyways, every selling situation, this is the one right here. Josh Metal, first-time home buyer, MI analysis. But that is a resource for you guys. Also, for you guys, I am going to start, I don't know how many of these black belt interviews I'm going to do, but I'm picking people that I know are black belts. You know, I've interviewed them before. I know they've done over 1,000 total cost analysis. So the people that I'm interviewing in this black belt series are, you know, way beyond black belts. They're grand masters at mortgage coach. And these are people that have, you know, created over 1,000 total cost analysis. Craig Strett, who I interviewed today, he's created over 2,500 TCAs. So I mean, think about that. You know, between him and his team, they've done this 2,500 times. He's had thousands of conversations with families, with referral sources. I mean, the guy's a grandmaster. And so I'm interviewing them around the process of going from white belt to black belt and defining what it is to be a black belt. So check that out. One last resource, and then I'll throw it back to you, Todd, and let's look for another topic to tackle. But this resource right here called Mortgage Strategy Interviews. Last year, I started this last year. To date, I'm at number 59. And this is where I'm interviewing top producers. I think literally everybody in this interview series is a black belt. I could be wrong. There might be one person that is not a black belt, but you know, 59 different black belts. And I interviewed them around a specific mortgage strategy. So for the person that's new in the business, you know, obviously you got to prioritize your time. You got to prospect first and foremost. You got to deliver great experiences, TCAs, and then you do need to learn. And you should prioritize some of these interviews as your learning track. Back to you, Tom.
No, I think that's awesome. And I feel bad for the one person you interviewed who's not a black belt, but my guess is that they probably are by now since you interviewed them. But, you know, I think it just reminds me there's a ton of value here in the community. And I think a lot of you are just lost. And so all that Dave continues to try to do is give you the easy button into something. And I still think it goes back to what I said a few minutes ago. You've got to prioritize it and don't watch 27 videos and then try to figure out what to execute. Figure out what you want to execute first, then find 1 or 2 or 3 videos on it and then execute on it and then move on to the next one. Because if you're just really consuming but not executing, you're just not really going to grow, you know, to where you want to go. And what I love about the community is we have black belts who are in there day in and day out asking questions and sharing. And then we've also got some of you who are brand stinking new and asking questions as well. And I think that that's what makes the community so unique, is that we've got, you know, so much interaction going on. And so, I don't know, I asked the crew here if they had any other, what they thought of your in Facebook, what they thought of your strategy, but I'm looking down at it and everyone's super quiet in there today. So I should pick on you guys. Like, let's see some action there. Or those of you who are in Zoom, start asking some questions, because this is, you know, Dave and I try, you know, once every, you know, 4 to 6 weeks to come in and kind of spark the conversation with some content. We've got ideas to get us through the hour, but the whole goal is to bring it back to where we started, which is mastermind level. And that's really what's on your guys' mind. You're here, and you can actually impact the direction of the rest of the call. Anything else we should say on Black Belt before we start talking about kind of some other ideas?
Yeah, I want to shine a light on this this video that Jeremy posted this morning. And, we spent time last week. We talked a lot. I pushed Jeremy to be more active as a leader in our community. I love the Mortgage Coach Live that Jeremy and I did last week when we were in person. Check that out. But this particular was just a little quick hit that he posted. He actually posted it like midnight last night, but we didn't approve it till first thing this morning. But it was just to give you guys some context, it was a video that he had given to his team. And his team is both operations side and other loan officers that he leads. And the whole theme of it was, be nice, but stay away from just pleasing others. Your job is to be a leader. And this kind of brings me back and reminds me of another core concept of being a black belt at Mortgage Coach. Again, I don't want to fire hose you guys, but it comes, I directly took this from Challenger Sale. And they talk about the best salespeople in America, regardless of the mortgage industry, just in all industries. They tailor, they teach, and they control the sales process. And then they're not afraid of constructive tension. They run towards the conversation. And they do that internally as a team. They do that when they serve other clients. The client has a vision of what they want. Like if you listen to this interview that I did with Greg, in one of the refis that he did, he calls out that the client wanted X, Y, and Z. And I gave it to him. I gave him those options. This is what they asked for. And then I said, and let's consider option 4. And option 4 is where he led. And so I think, listen to that. I think it's like 3 minutes. Good, quick hit from Jeremy, leading by example. And he just talks about be super nice, but the goal is not pleasing people. The goal is wowing people. And we know more about the mortgage than any consumer does. We know more about the experience than any realtor does. And so, maintain that role as a leader. And when you do kind of run into those points of tension between what the client wants and what's in their best interest, be super nice. So I don't know, Todd, if you want to add anything to that.
Well, my first thought is I wish I was sitting on your presentation, since I know these are slides for what you're about to present here in a little bit. And I'm like, ooh, this is going to be a really good presentation. I love that you brought in, I think 2 things. Number one is that's great leadership from Jeremy, right? The late, great Ron Quintero, when I went through his, I don't know what he called it, but it's how to basically be a better manager, right? When I was growing and leading branches. And he talked about how you should be sending out a video like that to your team. And think about that. Those of you who are leaders, that you have people around you that need you to love on them like Jeremy did, right? Your processors need to know that. If you have an assistant, they need to know that. If you have loan officers who work for you, they need to know that. And then on the flip side, if you don't have any of those, you've got realtors who maybe would benefit from a message like that. So look at what Jeremy did. What can you learn from it? And then how can you turn around and execute it with where we started this conversation with is around video. Do you know how Jeremy delivered that? Did he send it out text or did he email it, Dave? Any idea?
I don't know. I'm going to guess he might have texted it to everybody just because he has been using text. And I also know, I don't know that he uses BombBomb, but he does have an email platform. So if anybody wants to ask Jeremy that question, he's engaged in the community. I'm sure he'll answer. One last thing I wanted to, not last because we still got another half hour here, but one thing I wanted to shine a light on is I interviewed for the very first time Nicole Rissa. And this is a gal who just graduated from college, USC, last year, and she has 417,000 followers on LinkedIn. I met her 2 weeks ago at the social survey event. She did a 1-hour session on, LinkedIn 101, like the basics on LinkedIn, and she crushed it. I mean, she's an incredible speaker. She has 417,000 followers. When she had 250, she came out of college and she was the #1 college student on LinkedIn. So she's a LinkedIn rock star. I am going to be interviewing her more. And really my reason for interviewing her is most of what I see LinkedIn being used in the mortgage industry is to get recruited or do recruiting. And that's okay. I mean, that's what LinkedIn's backstory is. It's a place where it's your online resume. But she made a really good case that everybody should be strategic on LinkedIn because people are going to Google you. And when they Google you, LinkedIn has priority and it's going to show up. And so at a minimum, you should have a great resume for the families and realtors you serve because they're going to Google you. And LinkedIn is going to be a piece to that puzzle of how you build trust and respect. And then where I'm trying to take this conversation, and I don't know of a loan officer so far that is killing it in using LinkedIn to network and build relationships with realtors, CPAs, financial planners, and the wealth team in their local markets. Like, I know there's got to be a loan officer who's being strategic and using LinkedIn strategically to connect the wealth team in their local market, but I don't know who they are. So I don't really have a leader to shine the light on, but it is I don't know, we'll call it a passion project. To me, it makes sense that if I was a local mortgage professional and I wanted to get referrals from CPAs, financial planners, and realtors, that I would be intentional with how I use LinkedIn in my market. So two couple dots, watch this interview. If you know someone that's killing it in our community, tag them. I'm looking for leaders that are leveraging LinkedIn strategically as a mortgage planner, not as a recruiter. There's a lot of that content out there. It's not bad. I think it's a good use of LinkedIn. It's just not the project I have. Todd, anything you want to add on that?
Well, I'm just realizing that I thought I was really cool because I had 12,000, connections on LinkedIn, and I'm just way underwhelmed with myself. But I just put on my homework list. I'll be on a plane later today, and I'm going to be watching that on the plane for sure. I would say, listen to Dave's ask. If you know someone who's crushed on LinkedIn, or if you are, refer them on over. I think that would be awesome. And I'm still stewing, Dave, on the comment you made before that the goal is not pleasing people, it's wowing people. And you mentioned the Challenger sale. I listened to that book when I was skiing years ago in Park City. And I think that, kind of my thought on that, and the reason I went back to it is because I am seeing a lot of, you just went to the WOW Summit with Social Survey. I am seeing a lot of people who are getting really solid reviews on, from their clients because they're asking for them. But my question always is, were they satisfied or were they wowed? And, I would love us to continue to create more discussions and content around how you all are wowing your clients. What have you done differently that's getting there? And then also think through, and if you look at that graphic that David put up about, what's your sales process like? What's your experience like? Is it going to create a wow? And then what can you implement now that's pretty easy to put in there? Obviously the TCA is an easy one. But ultimately in the end, I think what I liked about that, Dave, and you're so good at giving the examples of how the TCA is a great way to do it, but that is it, right? The example that you gave of Scott's of using the fourth option and kind of throwing in the challenge to people. Think about that. That is your way. If you're just dealing fee sheets or shooting emails around with interest rates, which I'm still seeing, right? It's what I love about the things I'm doing with Win by Noon right now is I'm really pushing people to get on the phone so I can just hear, I know what's going on in Phoenix, Arizona, because my team is here, but I'm, now getting close again to the streets and, really every corner of the country. It's been kind of fun to hear. And, the problems that are here in Phoenix, the challenges and the opportunities that are here in Phoenix, guess what? Those are the same things I'm hearing everyone else have. So I guess I'm going to keep plugging, sharing the community, ask questions, and let's make this fun.
Yeah. So another question that came up, I think it was early this week. It might've been late last week. I didn't take the time to comment on it just because I think it was the most commented post last week. And I felt like people answered the question pretty thoroughly, but it was a loan officer that said, what do you do when you have high rates, or something to the extent that, like, I have high rates. And I just want to speak to that real quick and maybe go around in circles on it. So I personally believe that unless you are a call center loan officer who's making less than a half of 50 basis points, if that person doesn't have high rates, but everybody else that's making 100 basis points-ish or more, yeah, your rates are higher. You know, that's just the way it is. And then, you know, I do know that different lenders, you know, have some lenders are like, we're a low-cost provider. Some lenders are, we're a premium provider. So yeah, it's true. Different lenders have different margin built into the loan. Different loan officers have different margin built into the loan. But unless you're a loan officer that's making less than 50 basis points, you have high rates. So I wanted to say that, like, to everybody, you know, because everybody was just getting into it. There was, you know, the channel of which model in the mortgage business is better, got into it. But here's what I know. So I know for sure that unless you're making 50 basis points and less and you're working call center leads, you don't have the lowest rate. And I know for sure that the loan officer that's a black belt in advice and is doing the star, you know, they're doing more than the triangle. They're showing cost over time. They're showing financial strategies. They're, you know, adding a video to make it easy for the family to learn. I know for sure that that is the better loan officer. Even if they have higher rates, they're going to help the family make a more strategic decision. They're going to save the family time and heartache, you know, because they're going to have educated them. They're going to have made better choices. And I also know for sure that the loan officer that actually does annual reviews and actually keeps the client updated on, hey, how does your loan compare to the current market? I know for sure that's the better loan officer. And so I guess I just ask everybody, and I really want to applaud everybody who participated in that. It was a good conversation, but I would just ask everybody, you know, are you doing the things so that your advice is worth tangible value? Like, I think if your advice is not worth $1,000, like for a family, they'll be like, yeah, I got low cost leader over here. I literally am going to write a check up front to meet with the mortgage advisor. And I'm not suggesting that that's where the industry is going and that that's what you should do, but your advice experience should be so valuable that if they did give you $1,000, it was money well spent. And that's obviously clear after spending a half an hour and an hour with you. So Todd, I did a little bit of a rant on that just because I didn't take the time to comment on it, but I did want to weigh in on that post from, I don't know, a week ago.
I stayed out of that one too, intentionally, because there's a lot to say in there. And I think it's a mindset too. You know, I think in the end, you nailed it, right? If you're not in a call center, you got higher rates. And I've always scripted it around to clients, because we did that great call with Dave Gallegos maybe a year ago, where we had the guy from Crushing Price Objections on. I don't know if I can find the book quick enough, but ultimately,
yeah, value selling, I think it was called.
Yeah, but you know, the bottom line is this: is that another great book on it is by Voss. He's a FBI negotiator, never split the difference. But you know, the bottom line is that there's always someone out there with a better rate. And the problem is that as loan officers, we tend to decide how do we want to shop for the loan versus putting ourselves in the eyes of the consumer. And so, you know, my all-time favorite script was, and I always said it, and I did this when I said it, I said, hey, I don't have a red flag hanging out front of my office, and I would wave my hand even though they couldn't see me, that says guaranteed lowest rate. I said, the bottom line is, if you truly want to shop, I promise you can find some bank in Kentucky or somewhere that's trying to buy Arizona business and will beat our rate. But I said, we're always going to offer you something that's competitive. So number one is you need to be okay with the fact that you have competitive rates and that you don't have the lowest rate. And then, you know, number two is you can acknowledge that to your client if you're worried about it. Because if you do build rapport, right, they're always going to come back to you and say, gosh, you know what, Todd, I kind of liked you okay, but hey, I found this bank in Kentucky and they're $300 less or whatever that looks like. And oftentimes I find when loan officers are telling me a story about a loan they lost because of their high rates, it came back to the fact that they really didn't build that connection and rapport. The client got their fee sheet and never built that connection afterwards, and then just went off somewhere else and kind of blew them off. So I think you have to build that rapport. That's why that experience piece that we're talking about, that's why setting a TCA I think is so important. And then the last thing I'll say on it, and I'm really hesitant to say it, but I'll share it with the community because I think it's really powerful, is that when I ran branches, at the time we had hired the the number one mortgage team in our area. And one of the things they asked for is, hey, can we increase comp? Well, guess what? To increase comp, you have to increase margins. And so we had raised up our margins. And I would tell you that the teams that had a really great wow process had no challenge with the rates that we had on our rate sheet. But when we had individual LOs who didn't use the tools like Mortgage Coach and really weren't as well scripted and didn't take time to learn, right? You have to spend some of your time learning in this community. They were the ones who struggled with it and had problems. And so 2 times over a 2-ish year period, we lowered margins and lowered comp in order to use it to make sure that these lower producers could compete in the marketplace. And the weirdest thing that happened was that every single time the price exception requests, the average was within just a couple of basis points. So people's mindset was always, I have high rates even when we lowered them. It was always, hey, I have to discount when we lowered them. And I think that's why where I started was, hey, this is all about mindset. Accept what you got, sell what you got, and be okay with it. Because what I saw firsthand with, running a fairly high producing group, $300 million, group of producers, was that it didn't matter what the rate sheet said, they still sold the exact same way. Their mindset didn't change. So when rates were high, guess what? They discounted, at that time as they could. And when rates got lower, guess what? They still discounted the same. And when they were super low, guess what? They still discounted the same. So it's a mindset thing. Sell what you got, know it's competitive. And like Dave said, add value. So there's my match to your rant, Dave.
Yeah, no, it is. And it is so much to mindset. And there was someone that kind of weighed in on an integrity issue. And here's the deal. Not every consumer wants to buy everything at Walmart or Costco or Amazon. There is first of all, let's not forget, everybody, there is a part of society and a part of the culture that wants to pay more. Maybe that's 5% in some markets, maybe that's 10%, but they are a premium buyer. They do not want the lowest cost option. They want a more expensive option. And when they see the higher price, they're like, oh, that's for me. And then there is absolutely a culture, let's just say it's 15%, that wants the cheapest do-it-yourself option. And then there's the 80%, everybody in between. And so, here's the deal. If you train hard, like you work hard, if you've done, and I'm just going to use it as a metaphor, 300 Mortgage Coach reports, you know what? You are a different mortgage professional than someone that's, doing the triangle, the transaction. You are an advisor, you have a different experience, you have a different confidence, you show up differently. And again, I don't think Nordstrom's is going to go away. I don't think people that give high service, give high value, understand omni-channel, like, yes, we need to let families do business with us, do transactions in a way that leverages locality and leverages digital technology. But guys, you just got to get your mind right. So for the person that posted that, first of all, you crushed it. I really appreciate that post, because that is absolutely where you're coming from. Hopefully between the comments that you got and the rant Todd and I just went on, we gave you some value. And guys, keep posting questions, keep, using this community as a place to get answers and get better. Todd, you just grabbed a book. You got something else to share?
I grabbed the Crushing Price Objections. That's the book that we were talking to. It's really a great book. You have to understand it. You just hit the nail on the head. He says 1 out of 6 people won't pay your price, period. They want the cheapest deal. So obviously the goal is to identify that person as quick as possible. And that's always where you do that takeaway, right? That's where you say, gosh, I don't have the best rates. I mean, you let them know up front. We've all had that person who, grinds you for a rate. It isn't going to be fun to work with. I mean, I think that's always, isn't the goal, Dave, to have a big enough business where you have so many clients that you don't have to worry about the one who's going to grind you and be super frustrated when they go somewhere else?
Roger that, my brother. Again, you're not right for everybody. And remember, guys, we've got a playbook. One of the, probably the article that I am most proud of out of the 80 plus articles that I've written in LinkedIn is the Mortgage Coach Lead Conversion Playbook and the Mortgage Coach Lead Generation Playbook. I mean, both of those pieces of content in my LinkedIn profile, I mean, there's 20, 40 personal man hours into each of those. And then each of those is pulling from advice from, the top coaches, the top leaders in the industry. So go back and reference the Mortgage Coach Lead Gen Playbook. It's one of the articles in my LinkedIn profile. All right, guys, we're down to the last 10 minutes. Todd, you were talking about how, let's face it, interest rates are in the news, mortgage rates are in the news. You wanted to make a topic out of that. Why don't you kick it off?
I just think it's one of the things I love in the community. And I've got a couple of people who posted it in my Win by Noon user mastermind groups. I don't know if they've made it over here, but like Emmett Dempsey did a really great video on interest rates. And I do think that it's important, anytime that you guys know there's this talk out there, right? You have a couple of opportunities with your clients and with your realtor partners to educate them, right? So you had an opportunity last week, especially as rates were getting worse, to educate, hey, just because the Fed's expected to lower rates doesn't mean you should wait. Hey, so you're telling them, hey, here's what the Fed may do and here's what's going on. You had an opportunity to sell up there. And then now you see Dave's showing what Emmett just put out there. And you don't need to do it quite as fancy as Emmett did. It was his birthday yesterday, so apparently that's what he decided to do for his birthday. But now you have this opportunity. It doesn't have to be today. It could be next week, where you can go back and educate people, because ultimately what I think you'll see is when you look at someone like Emmett, I bet that where he posted on his personal page was shared over and over again by real estate agents sharing it with their clients. And so it's just that whole idea, Dave calls it edu selling, where you have this opportunity. And so I would love it in the community. Michelle Mason called out yesterday and tagged a bunch of people like Dan Keller and said, hey, where's your videos on this stuff? Because you can swipe and adapt, right? Don't steal the one from the person that's next door to your office or up the street, their video, but you can certainly swipe and adapt from someone from another state and post something similar. And in the end, it's all the same content. But I laugh because I have a friend who's a realtor who's buying a property, and at 11:01 on Wednesday, he texted me and said, hey, can your team now give me a 0.25% lower interest rate because rates dropped? And I sent him back like a ha-ha kind of thing. And he said, well, I've already had 2 loan officers text me that rates went down. And so I said, all right, well, that's teasing versus educating, right? That's selling versus educating. And so what did I do, Dave? I went on to the Rate Watch app and I shared with him what rates had done since the Fed's announcement. I said, well, that's ironic because look, rates actually got slightly worse since the Fed announced that they were lowering rates. I said, unfortunately, they're not educating you. And then he laughed, and later that day sent me a screenshot of another loan officer, sent him an email that basically gave the points that I had told him, quickly via text about, how the Fed works and what it impacted. So, my thought on it was, hey, let's just wrap this call up. We're talking about, hey guys, you should be thinking about what else is coming up that you can use to educate. They don't really care about the technical pieces, right? Like, well, the candlestick did this and this part did that. I mean, like your clients see those graphs. It doesn't mean anything to them unless you take the time, but they do understand economics. They do understand, hey, this is a short rate. This is a long rate. Hopefully, if you do a good job of selling it. So I just wanted to stoke the conversation here in the community down below of how else can we help each other? What else are you guys doing out there to, kind of hijack the news? Because you'll see that a lot. Bill Hillestead talked about it 2 years ago when we had him on, where he talked about, there's a viral video from a famous person, and then you kind of hijack that viral video and then put your little mortgage commercial on it. Just kind of some interesting things where I think we're not taking advantage of it as a community as much as we could.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right, Todd. I'm going to pull up another document that I really created it for myself and our team. It's a Google Doc that I've shared a few times in this group. And, the reason I shared it is we have a lot of really creative, really sharp black belts in mortgage coach. And heck, like Denise Donahue is not a black belt. She's a grandmaster. She's done over 1,000 total cost analysis. She's super talented at creating online content, using social media to promote things. So I'll put a link to this little whiteboard I have because it's just inspiration for some of the people that are really creative, really good at taking advice stories, advice strategies, and putting it on social media. And I'll put that out there. So
can I point something out, Dave, real quick? Part of the reason that people don't do this is because they want perfection. And my favorite part about Denise is when you look at it, it says peach out, right? Her spell check didn't catch the fact it was supposed to say peace out, and she put peach out. And the fact that she posted that and reposted that and never went back and edited it, right? Maybe that's her strategy. But either way, I always love it when somebody's willing to be transparent and humble. And that's what you guys forget. You guys think you got to, be totally perfect when you do it. But in the end, there's Denise. She posted that thing. I saw her original post and it said peach out. And it's there. It's probably super effective and worked. And most people said, made them actually think more about our post because they did it. So that would be my, sort of my 2 cents on it. And I just think that that's an area where, you continue to push it. We continue to talk about it in here. Personal brand is going to become so important. And that's really where I'm spending a lot of my time right now, is creating content around that. How do you create the easy button for people to get, personal brand out there? But that's the easiest one, because people want to know you, right? As I have stuff that I do with Win by Noon, I have a lot of people say, Todd, you just seem like a real, genuine guy. And I'm like, well, I'm just who I am when I show up here. I'm not, I'm certainly not as eloquent as a lot of the guests that we have on here who speak really well, who are super polished, super motivational. I just am, I am who I am. And that always worked for me when I was doing loans and doing my video updates, because people said, hey, Todd, it's not very good. But what they meant was, well, it's not overly produced, right? I didn't have that fancy thing that we just saw Emmett have, a fancy intro into my videos. It was just, hey, it's me, Todd Bookspan. Welcome to 2 Minutes with Todd for the week of whatever. And if I messed up in the first sentence, guess what? I kept going. I didn't actually stop and record it most of the time. Occasionally, yeah, I messed up so bad that I had to redo it. But, again, just be you and take that news and run with it. That's my action plan of the day.
Love it. Love it. So guys, I want to remind everybody, I'm going to be interviewing Craig Strent this Friday on how to get business from financial planners. Going to be his story, his strategies, his scripts. How does he identify a planner that he wants to do business with? How does he get a meeting with that planner? What does he do during that meeting with that planner? And then how does he follow up? How does he go from, hey, I had a good meeting, they liked me, I like them, I want to do business. How do you keep in touch? What do you do to follow up and add value? So we're going to be answering those questions this Tuesday, 9:00 Pacific. I will be at Digital Mortgage. If anybody is watching this right now and you have a leader from your company that's going to be at Digital Mortgage and you want to see them more effectively build Mortgage Coach integrations into your tech stack, like if you'd like Mortgage Coach at your company, if you'd like Mortgage Coach built into your LOS, your pricing engine, your CRM, your point of sale, you name it, you want to see Mortgage Coach more integrated, introduce me to your manager, tell them they should come meet with me at Digital Mortgage. That's where I'll be Sunday through Tuesday, Las Vegas. I am ready to wrap this up, Todd. So anything else you want to share or anything you want to talk about or any questions that I haven't seen that we need to answer?
No, I think the group was quiet today. I think it was a solid call. I'll throw out those of you who will be at the Vision 2020 Summit next week in Tampa. Make sure you come up and say hello. I know Emmett's going to be there, so I'm looking forward to seeing him there. And I know there's a handful of others who will be there. Obviously, we got Sales Mastery coming up next month, and you and I are going to be there hosting our Win by Noon Mortgage Coach Happy Hour. So we're looking forward to hanging out with you all there. And as always, Dave, I have no more of a highlight typically most weeks than spending my Friday with you and our community. So I appreciate everyone being here and love this group and just thrilled to be part of it.
Everybody, thank you for your attention. Thank you for showing up. If you got value, you liked it, you loved it, give us a like or a love, share it with your mortgage friends, and I'll see a lot of you on Tuesday. Have an awesome weekend, everybody.
Follow me on LinkedIn. I want to get to 12,100 later today.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, me too.
On my way to 417,000. I got a new goal. All right, guys. I'll have a great weekend.
Take care, everybody.